Welcome to a video on looping structures in ink. In this video, I'm going to talk the ways in which we can use knots and diverts to create a looping structure using the two concepts. To start, let's review what we know about knots. Knots are separate sections of a story. They are created in ink using two equal signs, the name of a knot, this case example, and then two equal signs. We also know that knots, because they're separate parts of a story, are standalone. So there has to be a way to access the knot, and there has to be a way to get out of the knot. Because they're separate, they're all these separate parts of the story. So we know then we can divert to a knot using a special combination of symbols, the minus sign and the greater than sign. This creates a divert, an arrow that points to the place the story will go to next. Right now, starting on line 1, we divert to the knot named example. The knot example starts on line 3. However, there's a problem. Right here on line 4, the knot doesn't end. It just exists. So we also have to remember, and this right here, expect at least one line of content, that for a knot to end, it has to end. So here we have a pretty basic example of using diverts and knots. The first line diverts to the knot named example. The knot example starts on line 3 and it only contains one line, line 4, which diverts to a special knot called end, which ends the story, which we actually see over here on the right hand side, end of story. So we know then we can use diverts, this special arrows, to move to a knot, and we can create knots as section of the story, and then we just got to remember we have to end the story somehow. If we want to create a looping structure in ink, we can use these concepts we already know to loop back by diverting to a knot while inside of a knot, which will divert back to the beginning of the knot, and then divert back to the beginning of the knot, and then divert back to the beginning of the knot. So let's look at an example. So we've got this code right here, and what I want to create is a choice. This is a choice. So notice it appears over on the right hand side. But what I want to happen is when I pick that choice, I want the player to, and I'm going to go ahead and just put two spaces, this makes a visual difference, divert to example. And it says this is a choice. Now notice it says, hey, something weird is going on here. What do you want to happen? Well, what I want to happen is when we pick end this, I want to, and I'll put two spaces here, go to the end. So let's rewind the preview. Here, I'll space that out. Rewind the preview over here on the right hand side all the way back to the beginning. So the second option. So the first line, while diverting to the knot starts right here in line 3 and contains two choices, lines 4 and line 6. Inside the first choice, this is a choice, we have a divert, line 5, to the knot example, and this is going to loop, which we'll look at here in just a second. Line 6, in this, all capital letters, has a divert right here to the special knot end, which will end the story. So over here we have our two choices, because we've immediately diverted to this knot from line 1 to line 3. This is a choice in this. If I click on this is a choice, we've looped. Notice it shows me the text, this is a choice, which is the text of this choice. That's correct. It then looped right here, diverted to example, back to line 3, and then showed us now this choice right here, end this, line 6, and we can then, of course, divert to the end of the story. Well, this is all well and good, but there's an interesting thing going on here. Something you may not know by first looking at them is whenever we use the asterisk, the little thing symbol right here in line 4 and line 6, it creates default choices. By default, these default choices are one-way choices. We make a choice and we go one way, or we go this way, or we go some other way. So they're one-way choices. We want choices that repeat we want to repeat. This whole video is about looping structures and looping knots. So if we want to repeat, then we need a different symbol. If we use the asterisk, it creates these one-way choices. We go one way, or we go another, or we go another. What we want is something that adds choices back. So Ink has thought of this, and in fact, uses the plus sign for this very purpose. This adds back, using the plus sign, the choice to the set when it is revisited. So let's completely rewind the story. This little second option, restart story. We see again line 1, we are diverting to the knot, jumping immediately to line 3. And then now we see two choices, line 4 and line 6. This time, if I click on this as a choice, I see the choices again. This is a choice. 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 Notice how we're looping. We're using the divert here on line 5 to loop to divert to the not named example. Not named example starts on line 3, and we are repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating. The plus symbols are adding back these choices each time we repeat. So instead of the one-way choices we saw with the asterisk, the plus symbol is acting to add back the choice. We see this is a choice, this is a choice, this is a choice, and we can completely make these same choices over and over again. This is looping the story structure and looping this knot by using divert and not, which we already know coming into this video, previous concepts. We also see, though, on line 6 in this, if we click that, it ends the loop by diverting to something else. So we already knew then these existing concepts of diverts moving to a different section of a story and knots as separate sections of a story. We then combine these here to creating looping structure, where we are diverting to a knot while inside the knot. So we are jumping to a new line of code. For 5 is moving back to 3. And then if we pick this as a choice, we'll move from 5 to 3, and from 5 to 3, and from 5 to 3. And then whenever we want to actually end, we include an option right here to divert to something else. In this case, the special keyword end, E-N-D, all uppercase, that ends the complete story. So let's review what I've talked about here. I've talked about how we can use the existing concepts we understand of knots as separate sections of a story and diverts using the minus sign and the greater than sign to create a little arrow to divert to one of those sections of the story. We also see how we can create a looping structure through diverting to a knot while in the knot itself, and this is totally fine within Ink. We can loop and loop and loop. But we also saw that our default choices we were making with the asterisk wasn't quite enough. We wanted to add back choices to the set. Instead of using one and then maybe using a different one, we wanted the choice to maybe use the same one, and use the same one, and use the same one. In that case, we use the addition symbol, the little plus symbol, instead of the asterisk, and this creates the same effect of creating choices, but allows them to be added back to the set, or allows us to repeat those same choices. Finally, we saw if we wanted to completely get out of the loop, we need to divert to something else instead of the same knot over and over again. And in this case, and on line 7 that I've highlighted here, we are diverting to the special keyword end, which ends the story. This has been a review of using knots and diverts to create a looping structure within Ink.